welcome to Viewpoints, Propositions Roundtable. We have members of our staff here today to discuss the propositions. We have a pretty well-rounded outlook on the propositions. We've got yes, no's, and undecideds, opposing viewpoints on every issue. Let's go ahead and introduce our panel first. Start over here on my left with Jeff Circo, our sports editor. Next to him, we have Rachel Green. She is a news writer. To my right, we have Jason Lillard, a news writer, as well as Marianne Case, our photo editor. And I'm Desiree Perez, editor-in-chief. Are you guys ready to get started? The first proposition is Proposition 1A. It's kind of known as the High-Speed Rail Bonds Act. Let's go ahead and get started on that. In the background to the proposition, it says there's a need for a more green approach to travel, that a high-speed train is going to connect Northern California and Southern California, but we're talking about $45 billion of state funds in the form of bonds. The yes on one people say no new taxes will happen from this. The no on one people say how else are we going to pay for it? It's going to be through taxes. So, and I'd like to cover the pros and cons of this and open up the conversation. All right, Jeff, starting with you, what is your stance on Proposition 1A?
I'd have to say no on 1A, and I like the idea of high-speed rail. I like that we'd have better, faster transportation. But the problem that I have with the bill is that it starts and only guarantees that it would connect San Francisco to LA. It doesn't work through the centers of commerce like connecting Riverside to LA or San Diego to LA. It starts and only guarantees funds for San Francisco to LA.
So the claims that you say the yes on one people are making about how this is going to relieve congestion on our roads, such as to and from work, you don't really believe that this is going to happen?
Oh, I think it would if it connected Riverside to LA and there was a guarantee that that would happen. But the fact that the only segment they guarantee to be used is San Francisco to LA doesn't seem to benefit anybody.
All right. Marianne, what's your take on Proposition 1A?
As far as Proposition 1A goes, it's financially irresponsible. Basically what it does is it puts our children and ourselves into debt. It has a 30-year payoff plan with the bonds, but in 30 years, we're going to be getting ready to retire, and those other voters could already be retired, so they're just passing the debt on to our children, and I think that is irresponsible.
Irresponsible financial investments. And Rachel, what's your take on Proposition 1A?
All right, well, I would vote yes because the cost, the $9 billion, or what was it, $45 billion is going to be paid back through the revenue collected in with the passengers who ride the train. So that might take 30 years, but that's where the money's coming from. It's not coming from taxpayers.
All right, Jason Lillard?
Again, financially, it's going to be paid off. And in the meantime, further ease of transportation is only going to create jobs. If not from construction alone, if people can work further away without spending $1 million getting to work, then they'll be able to earn more money. Hyperbole, yes.
Yeah, I really don't think people are spending $1 million getting to work or anything like that. But he brings up an interesting point. We know that our economy is in dire straits right now. Do you think Proposition 1A would bankrupt our state, basically, by spending money that we possibly don't have? Or do you think that by creating jobs and opening up new channels for revenue to the state, that we're doing something good with this? Anybody have thoughts on the economic side of this?
Well, I think it's a good idea. The concept is good, but it's another example of California proposing laws that have a great idea to them, but bad implementation. Example, if you could connect Riverside to LA, you would get the commuters off the roads, you would save the money in that way, and you would also have the few 100,000 people who would actually take it on a daily basis to bring in the revenues to pay it back. But when the only guarantees that they'll, complete phase 1 from San Francisco to the Union Station terminal. The problem that you have is not that many people are going to be able to use that. There aren't too many jobs that commute from LA to San Francisco.
Rachel?
I think, well, it says in the full text that it's going to connect Riverside to LA. It's going to connect the Inland Empire and San Diego and Sacramento and all these different places. So it's not just San Francisco to LA. It's multiple places that people will commute to on a daily basis. And it'll create jobs. It'll save people money on commuting costs. And it's a good proposition.
All right. Well, I think what Jeff is getting at about it's only going to connect, this LA to San Francisco is an accountability requirement. I've heard claims that there's no accountability on this. How do you respond to that? From what I read on the no side, they don't even have to complete the high rail system in order for this to pass. What's your stance on that?
Well, it does have accountability. Oh, sorry, I should talk into this. Before they're going to do anything, they have to get approved. Anything that's going to cost money, they have to have a plan. They have to have a timeline. There's no just like, give us $10 million and we're going to do something. You have to have the exact plan out, and you have to have when it's going to be done, how much it's going to cost, and all the risks involved. So there's a lot of, I guess, accountability they have to.
All right, Marianne, your thoughts on accountability as well as job creation or bankrupting the state?
There are claims that the proceeds, the revenues from the train will pay it off, but once again, that won't be for a very, very long time before that is paid off. In the meantime, we're going to be still feeding off of taxpayers' money and still working off of these bonds, which once again is putting us into debt. We are already in debt as a state, and asking for more debt at this time is not a wise decision. The jobs created could be created elsewhere. They don't have to be from this particular high-speed rail situation.
All right, Jason, any final thoughts on this before we have to wrap?
I think that any jobs created will also, of course, bring in tax revenue. So any deficit created by the high-speed train itself will be paid for through taxes and as a result of the high-speed train.
All right, there we go. Proposition 1A, you know our views. Hopefully this helps you make up your mind. Again, only you can make up your mind if you're going to vote yes or no on Proposition 1A. Thank you.